They look at the world and call it barren. Headlines scream louder than prayers. Screens glow brighter than the stars we stopped looking up to. Hope, it's treated like a child's fairy tale. Something soft, something fragile, something naive. And yet, here I stand, not with a sword, but with a whisper. Not with certainty, but with a parable. Let me tell you about a sower, not a king, not a scholar, a simple hand casting seeds, wildly, recklessly, foolishly, into thorns, onto rocks, across hardened paths. The world calls that waste, but heaven calls that love. And love, my dear children, is never strategic. You see, I know what you think. That faith must be earned, proven, justified. That only the worthy receive the word. But that is a gospel twisted by pride. The real Christ, the one buried in dirt, not theology. He does not inspect your soil before sowing. He does not wait for your perfection to plant purpose. His word lands where it lands, on addictions, on doubt, on loneliness, on despair. The seed does not discriminate. It arrives. Sometimes in suffering, sometimes in silence, sometimes disguised as a failure, but always with the intention to bloom. You think you're disqualified because you've hardened, because the world has trampled you, because your soul feels more like concrete than clay. But the sower doesn't care. That's the scandal of grace, that it dares to fall even when no one believes it should, that it keeps falling even when nothing seems to grow. Look around you. Everyone's performing perfection. Everyone's trying to be fertile soil in public while dying in private. But the seed is not fooled. It is patient. It waits. And when the moment comes, when pain cracks you open, it takes root in places no one expected. We forget that Christ was not just the sower. He was the seed. Think about that. He didn't just teach the parable. He became it. He fell, literally, into the ground, was buried in flesh, and rose not with a throne, but with scars. Scars that preached louder than sermons. He became the seed that died so others could live. That is not metaphor. That is strategy, divine and brutal. Because growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from breaking. Every flower once fractured. Every oak was once an acorn buried in cold, dark dirt. If you are in the dirt now, perhaps you are not dead. Perhaps you are planted. So I ask you, what is your soil? What lives in the shadows of your life? What thorns choke you? What rocks weigh you down? Be honest. Don't pretend. You don't have to sanitize your soul for the sower. He already sees it. He's already scattering. But here's the twist. The parable was never about soil types. It was about responses, not categories. Choices. The seed always has power. The question is, will you receive it? Will you water it? Will you protect it from the lies that say you're too far gone, too late, too damaged? Because if you do, harvest is inevitable. I've seen it. In prisoners, in addicts, in skeptics who cursed God in the morning and wept before him by night. The soil changed, not because they forced it, but because the seed refused to give up. There is a holy stubbornness in Christ that modern religion forgets. We teach neatness, rules, boxes. He teaches resurrection. Messy, mysterious, undeserved. And that's why some reject it, because it's too free. It violates our control. But love, real love, always does. It rewrites stories we've already decided are tragedies. It invades graves with gardens. That's what the enemy fears most. Not your failure, but your rising. And here's the irony. The devil doesn't mind that you go to church, quote verses, post prayers. As long as you never believe the seed actually works in you, he is fine with hollow holiness, with fruitless faith. What terrifies him is transformation, roots, growth, real change. Because that kind of hope, when witnessed, spreads. It threatens despair. It makes dead places jealous, and it cannot be monetized. That's why the sower sows without asking permission, because if he waited for your readiness, nothing would ever grow. He knows what you've forgotten, that heaven often begins where you think you've ended. So let the critics laugh. Let the intellectuals mock the soil. Let the cynics call the parable naive. But when the wind comes and the world shakes and their philosophies crumble, you will remain. Not because you're stronger, but because something unseen took root, and it is stronger than the grave. I'm not here to sell you hope like a product. I'm here to remind you that it was already placed inside you, before the betrayal, before the diagnosis, before the silence. The seed was there. You just didn't recognize it. But now it's stirring. The church does not exist to guard seeds in vaults of tradition. It exists to fling them, wildly, recklessly. Just like the sower. That's what they don't teach you in doctrine. That sometimes grace looks irresponsible. That sometimes mercy breaks the rules. That Jesus healed on the wrong day, touched the wrong people, said the wrong things, and for that, they killed him. But seeds don't die, they wait. And when the time is right, they rise. Not with revenge, but with fruit. The kind you can taste, the kind that feeds others. That's the kingdom. And it's not coming later. It's already breaking in. So I leave you here, in this moment between your questions and your answers, with one truth. You are not the mistake. You are the miracle waiting for the rain. The soil no one believed in. The story that refuses to. And though the winds will come, though doubt will howl, though voices will rise against you, remember this. The seed does not argue with the dirt. It transforms it. Quietly, faithfully, eternally. The seed speaks back, not with noise, but with life. And it says, even now, you were worth sowing into. But what happens after the seed is planted? Silence. That is where most lose faith. Not in the storm, but in the stillness. You ask, where is God when nothing moves? You question the sower's aim, the soil's worth, the promise itself. But let me tell you this, the ground does not forget. It remembers every drop of grace, every whisper of prayer, every act of surrender. It records them not in pages, but in roots, hidden, sacred, alive. And when the world mocks your waiting, thinking you're buried, heaven calls it preparation. Because even resurrection took 3 days. Do not romanticize growth. It is not polite. It is not efficient. It splits. It aches. It demands. And that's where most turn back. They want light without heat, peace without pruning. But every garden is a battlefield, between what was and what will be, between the weeds of old wounds and the blossoms of new beginnings. And in this war, God does not send angels to pluck you out. He sends the Spirit to stay with you, to whisper in the dirt, keep rising. Because true transformation isn't a miracle moment. It's 1,000 choices in the dark to not give up. There is a lie we've all swallowed, that holiness is clean, polished, predictable. But the holiest people I've met have mud on their hands and tears in their eyes, because they've fought for their fruit. They've stayed in the ground longer than comfort allowed. They've faced the weeds that others buried. And somehow, they still believe. That is faith, not pretending to be fine, but bleeding honestly while hoping fiercely. And if the church doesn't tell you that, let me say it now. God is not ashamed of your process. He's in it. Every painful, messy, glorious inch of it. And here's the cruel twist of life. We often see others' harvests while hiding our droughts. We scroll past miracles and wonder why we're stuck. But comparison is a thief. It steals not just your joy, but your perception. Because no one posts the pruning. No one broadcasts the dry seasons. But they're there. Even Jesus had them. Moments of betrayal, silence, agony. Moments when the seed himself asked for the cup to pass. And yet he stayed. For you, for me. That is not weakness. that is strength no storm can shake. The cross wasn't failure. It was farming for souls. So don't you dare curse your season. Don't you dare call your soil useless. I've walked through deserts that turned into vineyards. I've seen hearts once cold with rage begin to pulse with purpose. And all it took was one yes, not to religion, but to reality, that maybe, just maybe, God still works through the unexpected, through therapists, through strangers, through breakdowns, through midnight drives, through broken hymns. Don't limit him to stained glass and Latin prayers. He is not waiting in temples. He is breaking into apartments, scrolling through your silence, sitting with your numbness. The seed finds you. They asked me once, why does God waste time on those who'll never change? I answered with a question of my own. When did you stop believing he could? Because the sower does not sow based on outcome. He sows because of identity. You are his field, his poem, his painting, his battlefield, his bride, and he will not abandon the land he bought with blood. So let the Pharisees scoff, let them count failures like weeds. Meanwhile, the Spirit is watering what they can't see. Meanwhile, your roots are breaking through lies no theology ever healed. That's the real church. This generation does not need louder sermons. It needs honest stories, of addiction overcome, of marriages restored, of doubts embraced and not shamed, of saints who swore and cried and failed and still believed. That's what will make the next revival. Not trends, not aesthetics, but authenticity, the raw, trembling, unedited truth of grace. And I promise you, when people see your fruit, not your facade, they will come. Not because you're perfect, but because you're proof. That resurrection is not theory, it is testimony. And the seed still works, but beware. The enemy has another trick. He doesn't always uproot. Sometimes he overwhelms, with busyness, with noise, with options, until you forget you're even a garden, until your identity becomes performance. And when that happens, the fruit shrivels, because no tree thrives under pressure to prove. That's why Christ said, abide, not hustle, not strive. Abide, stay, rest, breathe. That's not laziness, that's warfare. In a world addicted to speed, rest is rebellion. And in that rest, the seed remembers its design, to grow, not perform, to bear fruit, not fear judgment, to become exactly what it was made for. So here we are, you listening, me breaking silence, the sower still sowing, the ground still responding. You may feel small now, insignificant, unnoticed, but remember this, every oak started unseen, every movement started underground. So let them doubt, let them dismiss, just don't let them stop you. Because what God begins, he finishes, and what he plants, he intends to harvest. You are not a lost cause, you are a late bloom. And even now, beneath the pressure, the parable is being fulfilled in you. The harvest is not far off. It is forming, in secret, in stillness, in sacred soil.